Now connecting you to the College Sports Connection podcast.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to the College Sports Connection podcast. I'm your host, Alex the Captain. As always, my partner, AJ the Guru.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
AJ, we had a great month of May to kick off our year of action with Coach Myers from Northern Illinois. But now we're shifting gears, moving to a winter sport here in the month of June. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest?
Yes, our guest hails from Bicknell, Indiana, attended North Knox High School, small Knox County, Indiana. Was a four-year letter winner at Purdue. She has spent time at Radford, Long Beach State, and Xavier before she gained her first head coaching position at Evansville, where she was there for 8 seasons and led the Purple Aces to relevance in the Missouri Valley Conference. In 2008, she took over as Toledo's women's head coach. In 20 years, there's a 378 and 250 record. Ladies and gentlemen, head coach of the Women Rockets, Tricia Cullop. Coach, thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so as I mentioned there previously, small Bicknell, Indiana. My first 2 years of college, I attended Vincennes.
Okay.
So I know Bicknell extremely well, not being too far away.
Yeah. Did you have some Bob's Pizza?
I did, actually. Now that you bring that up, I've had that name before. I was also pulled over there downtown. So
I'm not going to lie. I was pulled over a few times there, too.
I think I had like a tail light out or something like that, the one police officer in that town.
Mine wasn't a taillight.
It probably wasn't. According to them, it wasn't, but it was. Yeah, right there up, was it 67? It goes right through town.
Yep,
yeah, right there. So I attended Vincennes for 2 years, and we actually had a few girls when I was there who went and attended Evansville after, and they continued their careers down there.
Good.
So I know they with the basketball programs we have in VU, they've kind of spread them all over the country, it seems like now, more than ever.
Yeah.
But I saw that. I go, I guarantee you nobody knows where this little town is in Knox County. But
2 stoplights. That's all it had.
2 stoplights, if that, and one probably's not even working. So, but yes, I'm very excited to see that. We have some similarity there, and we, a lot of fun in those areas. You had to find your own fun, but we always had a good time. And of course, Vincennes, there's not a lot to do. So in the whole area, you had to find something. And it seems for you, it was basketball.
That whole area is very rich in the sport of basketball, and I'm very grateful that I grew up there. A lot of great people, a lot of people that, they're just genuine, and it was a really great experience. And I'm, even when I go back there, it's still my first home, and I enjoy seeing the people from there. But I'm very grateful for the coaches that I had growing up and the teammates that I had. I was very blessed. I really was around a lot of great people.
And you see it all the time too. Kids in the park playing basketball or a makeshift hoop in the backyard. It was that or baseball, really. From my 2 years down there, were the two of the most popular things. So basketball definitely. So much like I said, I was at VU. Basketball was king. It still is. I mean, the men's are winning national championships, and the women are still contending every year.
Yeah.
So.
It's a great place, and I grew up going down to watch games at VU. I used to watch their men's team when Coach Sparks was the coach there, and he took them to national championships, and they were a lot of fun to watch.
Sure, they won the national championship last year, actually, and of course Todd Franklin, he's been there for a long time. He's one of those guys who could coach D1 probably anywhere, but he just hasn't made right there. He's going to win every year. He gets probably 3 or 4 guys Division I scholarships every year, and he's got it made. When I was there, we had Deshaun Delaney, who ended up going to New Mexico, and then Darius Carter went to Wichita State, and that was like 2014 when they had their hot run. And so a lot of those guys, we have a kid with the Golden State Warriors now. So Coach Franklin's doing really well.
Yeah, I read about his accomplishments in the newspaper when I go home. My family always saves the newspaper for me.
Sure, and his accomplishments are a mile long, it seems like, from what he's been doing. So, but Alex, you're the Toledo guy.
I am.
So,
That
you're the
is true.
Toledo guy.
Coach, again, thank you so much for joining us. Like we mentioned, it is an honor to have you here and to be able to talk to you kind of about the Lady Rockets. And you know, when you first got to Toledo, that was back in 2008. You kind of kicked off your tenure with recruiting players like Nama Shafir, Courtney Ingersoll, Kyle Baumgartner. These absolutely talented players who ultimately helped you win a WNIT championship. Can you talk a little bit about that recruiting process and the shift from the culture that Toledo had before to kind of the every year consistently relevant culture you've kind of created over the last 12 years?
Well, I had to give some clarity. Courtney Ingersoll was actually in the first recruiting class that I inherited.
Okay.
But I had to re-recruit her because obviously I was a new coach, and she was one of the first living room I went into just to say, please still come. Thank goodness she did, because she ended up, leading the country in 3-point field goal percentage by the time she was done. Was one of the 3-point shooters at the men's 3-point shooting contest that they hold at the Final Four every year. But the first recruit that actually said yes to us when I took the job, that was a new class recruit, was Yolanda Richardson from Start High School.
Yeah.
And she was a big 6'3" center. I remember that when I took the job, there was actually an event the next day after my press conference. So I got announced as the head coach. I went to the bookstore and bought gear. I had somebody drive me to the airport, and I flew to North Carolina. And the first game I went to was Yolanda Richardson's game along with Angela Dortch. And I remember that their coach looked over and he goes, she was just announced yesterday. And I looked, I was like, hey, please notice, because I'm here for a reason. I really need to sign these kids. And I was so glad that those two kids committed to us. Yolanda is the best shot blocker in school history, one of the top field goal shooters in school history. Angela Dortch went on to be 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in our league after 2 ACLs. How about that?
Yeah. I remember the second ACL. Yeah.
Tough cookie. And then she played pro after that. But Nama Shafir was in that early class. And, she was somebody that I got the job so late that it was not an evaluation period. And so I got some film, and you guys will laugh because it was a TV game in Israel, which I couldn't understand a word. And I laughed because I still remember at halftime, there were these people dressed as chickens on roller skates that were going around the court. And I remember sitting there and just laughing. But what really stood out during the film was just this kid's IQ. She really understood the game. She had a great knack for it, but I wasn't able to see her in person. So I had to study the film and make a decision. And back then, Nama didn't really speak a whole lot of English. Right. She understood it, but when I would call her, she would give me one-word answers. So I was praying she could make it through school here. But she was a straight A student and had a great career and was just a joy to coach. She was a very different type of kid. She was an Orthodox Jewish kid and had some different regulations that we had to follow in order for her to be here because of her religious beliefs. But she taught me more about just acceptance and really appreciating differences in people than anyone I've ever coached.
Sure. And you kind of mentioned the fact that, she was an Orthodox Jew. I'd kind of read up a little bit about her. All these regulations you're talking about, how she couldn't get in vehicles after it got dark on a Saturday, and
Friday sundown to Saturday sundown.
There we go. Yeah. So that just blew my mind. Is it true that she had to go back home or call back home to a rabbi to get permission to play basketball?
Well, before she came over here, we talked to a rabbi about it, and there's differences of opinion with the Orthodox Jewish religion. Some believe no sports on the weekend. Her rabbi thankfully said that she could play on the weekends, but she couldn't practice until the Sabbath was over. And so we actually got really good. There was a website you could go to that told you exactly when it was over, and the time fluctuated depending on when the sun went down. So we would, think about travel. So we would have to get her places by Friday sundown, and then she would have to walk from wherever we were staying to the gym the next day. So sometimes we would put her at a hotel that was a little bit closer so she could walk to the game the next day. And then she would have to stay there. Like if the game was at Saturday afternoon, she would have to stay in that city until nightfall to when she could get back in a car again. But the interesting thing was during that time period, she couldn't use electricity either. So we would put a player with her that would use the key card in the hotel for the room and the elevator, and then we would pack kosher meals with us. Now I don't know about you guys, but back then I didn't know a whole lot about kosher. I knew there were pickles and hot dogs, and that was about it.
Right.
Same here.
So the guy that told me about her just said, Trisha, Google kosher. And I did. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize there was all this to it. And so
Sure.
when her father traveled here, we really had to do a lot of homework to make sure that she could be not only successful here, but also that we could accommodate all of the things that she needed to still practice her religion and to still be successful and uphold all the things she grew up doing.
Sure. Wow, that's
So,
a lot.
absolutely. So kind of going off that recruiting, having spent time in Evansville with the Purple Aces in the Missouri Conference coming up to Toledo, what was that? Is it different recruiting? I mean, it's a bigger school, but is it a harder sell because those kids have more options at that level? Or was it still a similar sell when it came to, between the different types of schools?
Different type of school. You're talking private versus public. I believe everybody has something to sell. And it was just a different sell in coming here. Obviously, this is a lot bigger school. It's in a little bit more diverse area. There's a lot more to do around this area than down there. But I still think both places have an awful lot to sell. I'll be honest. I was very grateful to have an opportunity there. They took a chance on somebody when I was 29. I didn't have any gray hair yet. I certainly did when I left. But I really appreciate the fact that when I was young and green as a coach, that their AD took a chance and said, we're going to give Trisha Culp an opportunity. And, I really learned a lot there, and the people there were phenomenal. I really enjoyed, still have very, very good friends there. And it was a difficult league. Back then you had Missouri State, which used to be called Southwest Missouri State. And during the time that I was down there, they went to the Final Four. They had Jackie Stiles on their team, who led the whole country, or led their team to the Final Four. And she was one of the best shooters in the country. Yeah. Talk about trying to stop her. I remember she scored 56 against Evansville the year before I took the job. So as we were preparing for them, I asked the team who guarded her, and they all raised their hand. And they said that the coach before me got upset and made them all try. And I said, well, that didn't work out too well. But, she had 41 against us my first year, and I thought that was a major accomplishment because we had cut her total down by 15.
Now, I can remember, too, like when I would travel down there, I always forgot they were in a different time.
Yeah.
When you get to Pearson or was it Princeton? Yeah, we get into Princeton, the time changes right there. And it always threw us off every time. And when you look back at that job, do you see it as like a good, big, good head coaching job closer to home? Was that kind of what, kind of drew you there? Because you were obviously at Xavier, not too far away, but being closer to home kind of helped with that transition?
Yeah, I had a great job as an assistant at Xavier working for Melanie Balcom. She later went on to be the head coach at Vanderbilt. I learned a lot from her. I had a great experience as an assistant. But what I really liked about it, as a head coach, you don't have a lot of people always happy with you. I knew at least my family would be yelling positive things toward me as a new head coach. But I also had really good friends. The point guard that was part of my high school team, her husband was an athletic trainer at the University of Evansville when I took the job. And so, I kind of already had a support system built in at the university. I knew a lot about the school because a lot of my classmates had gone to school there. And, and just the familiarity of being an hour away from home. But I did like that opportunity because I had lived in California and Virginia to be a little bit closer to my family, who I'd been away from for a little while, and get a chance to enjoy basketball with them for a little while.
Now, was it still the Ford Center when you were there?
I was there when it was Robert Stadium, which is the stadium before that. It doesn't stand anymore, which tells you how old I am now. But the Ford Center, we've taken our Toledo team down there. Is very, very nice. The women now are back on campus there, but Robert Stadium was a really cool place. Back when I was younger, we had gone to concerts there. It was just a cool venue.
I've been to a few concerts at Ford, and it's right in the middle of everything. So it was a great location, I had thought. I had gone out to do a few games as well, too, because as I mentioned, two girls from Vincennes went there after the Hawkins sisters. They were from California as well. And from Sacramento to Vincennes to Evansville, back to Sacramento. So, and then their brothers actually committed to Illinois to play at Illinois next year.
Wow.
But yeah, those. Oh yeah, exactly. I think their dad played at Vincennes back in the day too. But Evansville is a great girl.
Country. Everybody's been down there, right?
It seems to be the case. Everybody you talk to knows somebody down there.
So your transition from Evansville, obviously you spent 8 seasons at Evansville, had some really great years there. Talk about that transition to Toledo and what that was. That kind of a culture shock a little bit, like going from tiny Evansville to, Metro Toledo. What was that like for you? And what was that conversation that you had with Mike O'Brien? Like, was he just like, hey, come lead these girls. They need it. Like, what was that? What was that recruitment process for you like?
Well, I remember when I came up here to interview, I'd only been in Toledo once, and that was when I was assistant Xavier. We came up to play. And so I hadn't really been around campus. So my first experience going around campus was, this is a much bigger campus. It's a lot bigger. But secondly, just, the fan support, the facilities here are unbelievable. There were a lot of things that kind of got me really excited about this. And then when you look back at the tradition, the long winning tradition at Toledo, I really thought, gosh, if we really work hard, this could be a lot of fun. And I'm already passionate about basketball, but if we really put our heart and soul into this thing, we can get it going. And we did. And I think, that was, I really appreciate the opportunity that Mike and Kelly, our SWA, gave me, because, they also took a chance. There was a lot of interest in the job. I know that there were several people who interviewed. I think I was actually the last one. We were finishing up playing in the NIT. We had just gone over to Kansas and finished in the second round. And so I had just gotten back, and I think a lot of the other people had already been in. So when I came up, I had no idea if I was going to get the offer or not. But when Mike did call, I was excited, and I knew right away I wanted the job.
Right. And I've always been curious too, kind of the hiring process. Do they call you and say, hey, we have an opening, we'd like to talk to you about it? And then in those meetings, is it more schematics, or are they trying to figure out who you are as a person and then moving on to the schematic part from that?
Yeah. Well, ironically, and this is where kind of fate plays a role here. When I was an assistant at Xavier, there was a girl by the name of Katie Griggs that I coached on the team. And Katie Griggs is the stepdaughter of Kelly Savage. If you know anything about Savage Arena.
She just followed us on Twitter today.
Yeah. So Kelly Savage is the daughter of John Savage, who the arena is named after. So I knew Kelly from before, from coaching Katie Griggs. And so Katie actually messaged me and said, Coach, are you ever going to apply for this job? Everybody's applying, they're interviewing people, and, they'd like to interview you. And so, I'm in the midst of trying to win in the NIT. We had just beaten Southeast Missouri State, and we were really looking forward to the second round. But, I went ahead and threw my name in the hat, not knowing how it would end up. And, the great thing about it was when I came up to interview, I still remember that Kelly was a part of the selection committee that was going to interview everyone. And so was Jane Roman, who was a former assistant here, who I knew from back in the day when she worked for Bill Finley. And so right away, there were 2 people on the committee I knew. And I thought, gosh, this is weird. I'm used to interviewing kind of cold turkey. And it's almost more nerve-wracking when you know the people, because you're like, gosh, I hope I do well. Because I respected both Kelly and Jane so much and knew what a great career both of them had had at Toledo. And so, it was exciting to finally have that opportunity to say, hey, we want you to come here and to get going.
When it comes to your recruiting, we talked to Coach Myers about this a few weeks ago, and of course he's on the west side of Chicago, but being Toledo is kind of an interesting area because you have Detroit not too far away, you've got Cleveland not too far away, Indy's not too far away, Columbus. So as a coach, do you find that, kind of easier on you because you don't have to travel, coast to coast? You have a lot of homegrown talent in the area?
Well, compared to where I was, that's one thing that really attracted me to this job because, at Evansville, I would have to drive 2.5 hours to St. Louis or an hour and a half over to Louisville, or 3 hours north, even though you're in the same state. Back then, there was not a good road to get to Indianapolis till they built 69. So I was driving quite a ways to get to pockets of talent. Here, you're right. It's like, first of all, I just need to drive around Toledo because there's plenty of talent here. And then Detroit's an hour, get to Cleveland in 2 hours. But if you circle a 4-hour radius of Toledo, there's a pretty good nucleus of talent here. And the goal has always been to keep it home. The trouble is everybody shops here. And so
Mhm.
I've got to build bigger fences. So, but we've had some good success. Tanea Beecham came out of Rogers High School. Mariah
Mhm.
Copeland came out of Notre Dame. Kayla McIntyre out of Notre Dame High School, and then Yolanda Richardson out of Start. We've Soleil Barnes is from an hour north in Michigan, so we've been able to bring some local talent in, and I hope we continue to do that.
Sure. It was so funny. I was looking at your roster, and you have Kaylee Bolzer from Mississinawa, which I'm in
Yeah.
Fort Wayne, so she's just south of me a half hour. And I do radio for New Haven High School here in the area, and I remember her name now. I'm calling her a couple of her games last year.
Yeah.
But Fairmount's no different than the southern Indiana towns you grew up around.
Yeah.
It's a one stoplight town right off 69.
Well, first of all, I'm impressed you knew how to say Mississinawa, because everybody that sees that usually stumbles.
Oh yeah.
I have to correct
called
them
many of
with
their games.
my Indiana roots.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I've called a lot of their games over the past 3 years now,
Yeah.
football and basketball. And have you
Hey,
been on 69 South yet?
Oh yeah, constantly.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's great.
There's you better not need to get gas when you're driving. There's not enough places to
No.
stop, but you can certainly
There's
fly.
not. I can remember when they finished that up. I'll go down to Bloomington and things like that, and it was just a straight drive. No problem at all until you got to 469. But that's a whole different story.
Yeah. Kaylee Bolster, though, we're excited about. She's
Mhm.
a 6'4" kid that can block shots and run the floor, and she can shoot threes. Her sister, ironically, is a volleyball player at Ball State. And so we tease her every time she comes over to campus about what she's wearing.
I think
but,
I knew that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
That's
I'm really
awesome.
excited about Kaylee. She's got a big personality.
Mhm. Yeah, I can remember watching her playing, and she, being as tall as she was, she dominated. Honestly, a lot of the schools in this area, she was always the top player statistically in nearly every game.
Yeah.
So you spent 4 years as a letter winner at Purdue. What was that like, making the NCAA tournament, and playing Sweet 16, Elite 8 games? Like, that atmosphere just had to be absolutely electric. What was that like for you as a player? And now, obviously, your goal as a coach is to get Toledo back to that point. But what was that like for you, experiencing that as a player? Kind of describe that a little bit.
Well, it was an amazing environment. But first of all, it was such a blessing to play for Coach Dunn.
Yeah.
Coach Dunn, Tom Collin, who later became the head coach at Arkansas, Gail Gestencourt, who went on to coach at Duke and Texas. That was our staff. Pretty good staff.
A little
but
bit.
I learned so much from them. And I think what's a true testament is how many of us became coaches after that. Michelle Joseph went on to Georgia Tech, and then Terry Morin's now the head coach at Indiana University. Even Sharon Versup, who graduated before me, is the head coach at Purdue. But there's a lot of coaches, even on the men's side from the Purdue days, that are in the ranks. Matt Painter and I are the same age. And then the head coach at Green Bay is a former Purdue alum. Brandon Brantley, who's assistant at Purdue, is a Purdue alum. So I could go on and on about that, but there's a lot of us out there. I would argue that the Purdue men's and women's coaching tree might be bigger than most out there, but I think that says what a great experience that all of us had. Mackey Arena was a great arena. The fan support there for women's basketball was outstanding, and we had a great collection of talent. We just did a reunion night a couple weeks ago with the team that won the first ever Big Ten championship. And that was a lot of fun. I still remember, that final, I think the game to win it, we beat Illinois and ended up drilling them by like 30 because we were so excited to win it. It was like the monkey got off our back. But more importantly, it was who we won it with that mattered. And those coaches and my fellow teammates were just a lot of fun to be around. Even to this day, we laughed for a solid hour the other night, just getting back together.
Right.
I was in Mackey a couple of years ago, actually, and of course they've just done renovations recently. It looks incredible what they've done to that place.
Yeah, it looks a lot different than the far cry from when I was there. So nice padded seats down low, and
well, I think they
I would have liked it. That would have been in the way of me running stairs all the time.
There we go.
Right. I think they had expanded the outside, and they took out like half the sidewalk out there, so it's a narrow walkway now. But like the whole lower bowl of the arena just looks incredible.
Yeah, there's a court actually underground. If you walk up the tunnel, there's a practice court up in there that they dug out underground. That's pretty cool. So they've done a lot of nice additions.
And I think that I frequent Purdue often, being an Ohio State fan. I try to go over there every chance I get. And it seems like every time I'm there, there's new construction on a new facility. And I can remember when the Drew Brees facility went up there next to the football stadium, and they tore out the west end zone football stadium and put that tent in there. So they're always doing something. It seems like those booster and alumni dollars are doing really well.
Well, and Drew Brees has been very giving.
Mm-hmm. Our academic facility is incredible.
Yeah.
You have had a lot of success at Toledo, especially at home. I think I was reading somewhere the other day, Toledo has been in the last 10 years has ranked in the top 30 in terms of fan attendance for women's basketball games. That's impressive, especially given that it's a mid-American school, so one of the mid-major programs. But to be one of the best schools to have that fan support, that's got to mean so much, not only to you, but to these players who, especially some of these international kids who don't have their families playing, or that they're not playing in front of their families. That's got to mean a lot to them to have thousands of people supporting them.
Well, what we always tell people on the recruiting trail is, we're ahead of a lot of BCS schools in the country, which is amazing. When you look at that list and you start rattling off the people that we're ahead of, and then you pull up their marketing departments and you look at ours and you're like, how's it happening? But I think it's because, number one, our marketing staff does a great job, but also it's a tradition. People grow up buying season tickets here. That's something they've done their whole life. I could introduce you to fan members that have been season ticket holders for 20 plus years. And when it's a tradition, that helps. But also, they do appreciate winning. And, as like, for instance, the year we won the NIT, we had 2 sellouts that year. Prior to winning the NIT, we averaged 1,500 fans a game. After the NIT, we've been close to 4,000 every year since. And so we gained a lot of fans. I think a lot of people have that misinterpretation that the NIT is a terrible thing, and it's not.
Yeah.
If you look at a lot of attendance in women's basketball, the teams that have went on to win a championship, like Arizona, for example, their attendance prior to winning the NIT last year, I guess it's 2 years ago now, since we didn't have a final, they have had incredible fan support since. Well, ours was no different. And the one thing we tell recruits is, why wouldn't you want to play somewhere where the fans truly appreciate women's basketball? It's treated like a pro sports arena. There's ushers, there's parking attendants. I joked that my first game, I barely got into the arena because they didn't believe I was the new head coach. I had to pull it up on my phone and show them. But it's an unbelievable environment. And I like the fact that it's not too big. 7,300 people capacity is better than having 12,000, seat arena and averaging 4,000. It's going to echo a little bit if you do that. But the size of our arena is perfect to have a great home court advantage. And not only that, but it's intimidating. I still remember the first sellout we had in that. I remember we were playing UNC Charlotte, and they had just upset Florida, and our fans formed a tunnel around the court. And I remember their players were standing in the middle with the balls underneath their arms, just looking at the fans. And I was scared to death about how athletic that team was. And we had them down 20 before they knew what hit them. You can't tell me the crowd didn't have something to do with that.
Right.
I was very, very grateful. And then even in the final game against USC, another sellout, the crowd, it also motivates our players. We don't want to let this crowd down. They do help with officials, which I appreciate. But they are fantastic. But the other thing that we tell our players, and this is more of a professional development thing, is that when you graduate, because we average that, there's a lot of media that come in our media room. And so you're going to be so used to answering questions off the cuff that by the time you go through a job interview, you're going to be a pro. And you don't have that experience everywhere. And so we feel like we're preparing our kids for what's next. We're giving them an incredible atmosphere. And if you're going to have a great season, you better play in front of a great crowd and own your home court. And that's something we take great pride in.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of playing in big games and big-time moments, you guys traveled to South Bend this year, played Notre Dame, came up very, very close. That's an extremely tough place to play. I went to games there as a kid all the time. But Muffet McGraw obviously retired this year. In your kind of eyes, what does she mean to the game, not just women's basketball as a whole?
Well, I appreciate her so much because not only is she someone that has really given to the game, but she's a winner. She's won multiple national championships. She's done it with class, but she also gives back. She's still on a committee to help women's basketball now that I'm a member of. And I'm like, I laughed because I was making assignments on this committee the other day, and I'm like, Muffet, I'm going to give you a pass because you've probably been through this a million times. And she was like, thank you. But I think that's pretty amazing. And, she's a trailblazer trying to help women with opportunities. I think you guys all heard her speech after the Final Four a year ago. But I just appreciate the fact that she is trying to help future young ladies become coaches and to have opportunities and even just help inspire other people to be better. She just filmed some things for the WBCA that I just watched her Zoom clinic where she talked about, coming through a difficult year because they had a lot of injuries and they were really young. And, I called her afterwards and I texted her and I just said, hey, I just went through one of those too. And I feel you. I understood everything she was saying. Yeah. But she's an icon and someone that we will always remember who gave her best and poured a lot into this game, not only for her team, but for everyone else.
I can remember when I was younger, because I grew up in Plymouth, Indiana, so only 20 minutes south of South Bend. And so we'd go up to Notre Dame every year for her camp. And I can remember it was just thousands and thousands and thousands of kids up there, it seemed like, just to be with her and her team at that time, because this was the early 2000s, and they were running college basketball still. And so I can just remember her impact on the youth at that time, especially in South Bend being a good athletic town. Just her impact was just incredible on that program. And it's going to be there forever, I think. Was she at Notre Dame when you played?
She recruited me. She came to my house for a home visit, and I'll never forget that. And we did play against Notre Dame when I was in college. But I've always had so much respect for her, not only as a coach, but as a person.
She's always done it right. And, in our eyes as fans, she's, doesn't mouth off. She's, everybody gets her respect, it seems like, or you have to earn it. And once you do earn it, it's there.
Yeah.
But you were talking about giving back. Something you guys have done very well over the past few years is raising money for the Susan G. Komen Foundation of Northwest Ohio. How important that is to your program?
Well, it's very important. Not only do we helping the Komen Foundation with our pink game, but we also help our UTMC Cardiology Center and then the Munt Cardiology Center. But we also help out the KL Fund with the shirts that we buy. And this is a very important game to me. My aunt is a breast cancer survivor. My mother has since passed, but she was suffering from breast cancer as well. And so that's a near and dear issue for our family. And I think you'd be hard-pressed not to find anyone in our program that doesn't know someone that is either a survivor or been through it or something. So, it's very easy to get behind. But, when you go to early in my career here, we took our team down to the Race for the Cure, and I met Chris Peterson here in town, a local TV anchor, and she and I have become very, very good friends. But I really appreciate her help because for our pink game, she's always emceed it. She's always lend a hand, and I'm very grateful for her help. That's made that game be a real class act. And we auction off our pink jerseys, and I think we've raised over $150,000, which is pretty amazing.
Sure. Is that something you kind of make like a week-long event around campus, or just kind of specific to that night?
Well, we order those pink jerseys at the very beginning of the season, knowing that we're going to wear them once and auction them off. I think the most expensive jersey we ever auctioned off was Nama Shafir for $4,000. Yep. But that kid, hers probably would have gone higher if we'd have left the auction open. But, it's something that our marketing department is planning for quite a while. There's a silent auction. There's different items that people can pick up at the game, but they sell pink shirts. But it really is, one of the neat touches that we've done lately is have survivors be a part of our introductions. And so a survivor walks out with every one of our players, and a survivor sings the anthem. There's some neat touches that we've added through the years that really make it a special day.
Was that something you brought on when you became head coach, or was that something implemented there before you got there?
I don't know if it was here before or not. I just know that when I did get here that I went and met with our marketing staff and said, hey, I'd really like to do this.
Okay.
So, that's something that we've tried to do. And on the days, on the calendars that we've been able to, we've also tried to do a kids game where we do a field trip day. And that's always a lot of fun, one of the highest pitch crowds you can ever have. But I really enjoy that because there's always kids that it's their first time to ever go to a college game. And maybe their family can't afford it, but it's such a cool experience. And I really enjoy that. And I enjoy seeing the smiles on the kids' faces when they're there.
Sure. Now, do you want to talk a little bit about the academic excellence too of your players? Over the past few years, you've had 20 players who have been all academic MAC. How do you guys manage that being such a demanding sport, but also being able to get your academics, making sure they're still a top priority?
Well, and not only with our program, but something I would say that I'm very proud of at the University of Toledo is that I believe 6 out of the last 8 years, we've had the top GPA in the MAC for the athletic department. So not only is our women's program strong, but all of the programs are strong. And I think that it's really it stems from, not only our academic services, Erica Lavender and Jillian, who works with our team, but all the coaches. It's just a priority. But I think it comes down to who you recruit. We try to recruit people that, that is their priority, is to get a great education. And obviously the University of Toledo has great offerings. We've got a lot of great majors, between engineering and business and teaching and medicine and on, accounting, finance, business. I think I said business, but we are one of 17 comprehensive universities in the country, and we're very proud of it.
Yeah, no, that's I think it's definitely a testament to, like you said, the university, but like the commitment to the players as well. Like a lot of these players know that, they're here to get a degree. They're here to, have something after basketball, have something outside of basketball. And I think it's really, really cool to see those players so committed to earning that degree. I think a lot of times, one of the things I've kind of observed with Mid-American schools or, a group of 5 schools is that the Power 5 schools, those kids, a lot of them go pro. Whereas, the group of 5 schools, they realize, hey, I may get a look, but, my academics have to be a priority.
Well, and the other thing that we do that's kind of a neat thing is that in women's basketball, if a player says they want to be in business, I may pair them up with Kelly Savage for a mentor. Kelly's there was Savage Associates, her family business. But no matter what they want to be a lawyer, I might pair you up with Jane Roman, and on and on and on. But our players have some amazing mentors. If you want to be in communication, I might put you with Chris Peterson. But we have some of the most amazing mentors that our kids meet with. And our whole goal is not just for them to get a great degree, but to get some experience, to go job shadow someone, to get some great experience, go to lunch and ask what kind of questions are going to be asked of them when they take their first job, or what experiences they should go seek. Just to get some extra help is a big deal. And as you guys well know, you want to do everything to make your resume jump off that employer's table.
Absolutely.
We're talking about experiences here, and right now in the world we live in, it's all one experience nobody's ever been a part of, really. And when it came to the MAC tournament this year, you guys were on a run, won 2 great games, and then tournament's canceled. So as a coach, kind of your mindset, how do you tell your team, say, hey, this is what's going on, season's over?
It was frustrating because you nailed it on the head. We were playing some of our best basketball at the end of the season. We had been through some really rough times with injuries, and we were young, and we were trying to figure some things out in the middle of the season. We had 1 week where we lost 3 players to injuries. And so we were just starting to get a little bit healthier as we went into as the conference tournament. In that last game against Central Michigan at home, played exceptionally well to beat them at home. And then we went on the road to Akron and won. And then we went, to the tournament. And of course, our first round was against Central, which was beneficial to us because the kids still remember the scouting report. And we played really well. When your team is in a groove like that, you just are excited about what's coming. And that was the most disappointing thing, is that we finally hit this groove that you knew we had a chance. If you would have asked anybody in our program, can you win the league? They would have all said yes, as far as the tournament. And we really believed we could. So when at practice the next day, we had a day in between games. One of our administrators called me right as we were stretching to get ready to practice in the Rocket Mortgage Arena. And he just said, Tricia, they're pulling the plug. And that was one of the hardest conversations I've had with a team. I've never had a team that we didn't finish a tournament. To even see the bracket as we were walking out of the hotel just looked weird. I'd never seen an unfinished bracket before. So it was hard to say goodbye to our seniors knowing that we had unfinished business, to let them know that was it and they didn't have any say in it. But we all understood that it was important that we keep everyone safe and that this was bigger than basketball and bigger than all of us. But it was sad because we also knew as we got off the bus that we would all be dispersing and going all different directions. And, I've yet to get back with that group. And I don't know when and if that will ever happen. So, I miss those kids. They were great. I've been on a lot of Zooms with them, but I can't wait to see them in person again.
Sure. And you talked about getting hot at the right time and looking at the standings for the women's MAC this year. This was probably one of the most competitive seasons as a group, probably in a long time. I mean, Kent State was 11-7, Ohio was 11-7, Central 16-2, Ball State 13-5, and Western 10-8. So really, the top group of teams was just dominant this year. It seemed like probably the first time in a long time those numbers have been up that way.
Well, the last 3 years, the RPI, which we're switching to the net soon, but the RPI the last 3 years has hovered between 8 and 10 in the MAC for women's basketball. I think there's been a deliberate effort by all of the coaches and deliberate intention to schedule in a way that we could get at-large bids. Prior to that, I think there was only one other year that 2 teams got in the NCAA tournament from the MAC. And so we were on track to make it 3 straight years of multiple teams in women's basketball, which is unheard of. Yeah. So, hats off to everybody in our league, because not only do we have great coaches who have recruited really well, but we have coaches that are willing to stick their neck out on the line to schedule in a way that garners that kind of attention. Now we've got to figure out the net, because this is a brand new bird, and all of us have to figure out what goes into all this equation to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep that string going.
Sure. You mentioned about the MAC teams not getting more than one bid in the tournament. I remember a particular season that was particularly rough on the Toledo fans. I think you know which season I'm talking about, the 2012-2013 season. Toledo had 4 losses that year. And I remember as a fan being extremely frustrated. How is that as a coach, knowing you guys put in so much effort with 4 losses on a great campaign to just because you fell short, in the MAC tournament to not make the NCAA tournament? Like, how do you convey that message? Like, guys, we did everything we could, but they just don't see it the same way we do.
Well, the tough thing back in those days when we were a one big league is that you had to be perfect on that one weekend, and it really didn't matter what you did before that. And, that's a lot of pressure. It means you stayed healthy at the right time. Nobody got the flu. That means nobody sprained an ankle. That means, just everything had to fall in place. And so, that's very difficult. I mean, you look at Central Michigan, they just came off a great year, and yet we beat them in the quarterfinal round. Yeah. So I'm sure that would have hurt even their chances. But, it's a lot of pressure. But still, the one good thing is when you win the regular season, you are guaranteed a berth in the NIT. But the way we've been scheduling, it doesn't mean you're down and out. And that's what, if we could take that 2013 team and insert them in the last 3 years of this conference, it would have been an NCAA tournament team. And that's the disappointing thing with all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's interesting how many of those, people who kind of make that determination on who's in and who's out, how many of them don't get to sit in on those conversations for scheduling. Like, how many of those schools used to want to schedule a Toledo? If I'm UConn and I know Toledo's good, why would I want to risk marring my record against a good group of 5 school, And so I'm sure that that's extremely frustrating scheduling as well.
Well, the UConns and the Notre Dames of the world, they'll say yes still.
Okay.
It's that, probably the 10s to the 50s. They don't want to play you.
Okay.
And the top will still play you, but trying to get those other quality games in there that maybe you do have a chance to win are very, very difficult to get. And in some of those years, I heard a lot more dial tones when I called people than anything.
Mm.
I would say, "Hi, it's Trisha from Toledo." "Well, good one, Trisha. See ya." And they would hang up. But scheduling's challenging, and I think it's going to get even more challenging as we head into this time after the pandemic, because a lot of conferences are adding conference games. The MAC just added 2 more games, so that's 2 more opportunities that we don't have to go outside of the league and bring up our net score. So the games that we have remaining are crucial that we schedule correctly.
Is there an arena in the MAC outside of Toledo that when you see on the schedule of traveling here, kind of excited about?
I think that our kids enjoy the Central Michigan rivalry between the two. We've enjoyed playing over at Ball State. I know you're a Ball State grad. Those games are usually knockdown dragouts. Those 2 places probably we enjoy the most. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't say the BG rivalry. When I first took the job, when Kurt Miller was coaching at BG, it had been like 11 straight times that BG had beaten Toledo. And I remember that the first time we finally did it, there were 5,800 people in the stands. Allie Clifton was on the team, who is now working for the Lakers Lake Show.
Yeah.
And funny story, I remember turning to them right before the buzzer went off, and I just said, "Act like you've been here before," meaning act like you've beaten them before. And out of the corner of my eye, they're running like yard apes to the middle of the floor, just going nuts. And I just laughed to myself because I thought, why did I even say that to them? They finally did something that they've never done, and who am I to tell them? So I have a picture of that in my basement that I laugh every time I walk past it, because at the time that was the leading attendance in the league, and just that's a special memory. And since then, we've done a pretty good job in that rivalry, but that's a fun rivalry too, just because even when we play down at BG, our Toledo fans show up in droves, and both programs are very well supported, and that is a fun rivalry.
Now, as a coach, I'm sure you enjoy it as well. For when you travel to other MAC schools, it's a quick bus trip. You can be home, within the next day or so. You're not getting in a flight and going cross country. You can be to BG in 10 minutes, and Central, Eastern, Western, Ball State's not that far. So I'm sure you have to love that as a coach.
Well, I think you drive faster than me. It takes me 20 minutes to get down to BG. Now I know why those police pulled you over. But no, compared to the league I was in, we had a lot of long drives. We had some that were 10 hours, So to come here, and our longest one is 6. I used to laugh when I got on some trips here, and the kids are like, "Oh, it's 6 hours." And I thought, gosh, you guys are spoiled, because I didn't think that was a big deal at all. I think the MAC geographically is awesome, because you're not spending, I definitely cut down on my movie watching because there's not enough time to watch all the movies. But, really, you can get there and back. I love the fact that we play Wednesday, Saturday. So there's 2 days in between the games. So if you have a game on Wednesday, you're back that night. You might leave Tuesday night, you get back Wednesday night. Then you've got Thursday, you got Friday at home, and maybe you play at home on Saturday. But I spend a lot more time at home now, which I really value the older I get. I like my own bed better than any hotel bed. And I know our players do too. So the wear and tear on their body is not nearly as bad. Also, our kids are missing less class, and so they're more rested when they're going to school. And so being centrally located in the league has its advantages in those 2 respects.
Now, I'm assuming the 6-hour trip is to Buffalo?
Yeah, and depending on the weather, as you head over to Chicago.
Because I've done that trip to Buffalo in the winter, and it's brutal.
We were on our way back home from Buffalo one time, and I remember there was a whiteout. And our poor bus driver, I just saw his white knuckles, and I thought, man, this is enough. And so we called ahead to the next exit and made him pull over and got a hotel. But, man, I was like, I don't even want to drive in this. I can't imagine him trying to drive this big old bus. So we've had some interesting drives home from Buffalo as well.
I can imagine, because 80-90 is not the best road to be on when it's clear out, let alone in a whiteout.
No. So I did want to briefly touch on the special NIT championship team. That final game against USC, Savage is packed. You know, like you mentioned, the fans are on the floor. You know, that's one of my favorite things. I love watching the fans do. I think some of them have the shirt. They say, "What Cullup's crew?" Is that? Am I correct in
Yeah.
remembering that? Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest things that I see in college basketball. What was that atmosphere like, and how do you as a coach prepare those players for that, knowing that they've not been there before?
Well, one of the coolest things was right before the semifinal game. Well, actually, before the final game, I remember there was an email that went out around campus that basically said, you know, we're so sorry, the phone lines are down. We're experiencing outages due to people calling in the call volume for NIT tickets.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think I'm the only one that responded, that's awesome. And the two guys that were supposed to fix the phone lines were actually in line to buy tickets and wouldn't get out to fix them until they gave them tickets to the game. So, you know, that was kind of a funny story. But the arena sold out in 6 hours. And I remember that the line was starting to wrap around the building. And so we were practicing, and we actually stopped practice for a minute. And I just told the players, go thank them. That's so cool that these people want to come support you. And I remember back then our offices were up in the top of the arena, and I laughed because we have this elevator that goes up and down for the Grogan room. And, you know, so all these people are going to have something to eat before the game. Well, I can't catch the elevator down. So I'm running as fast as I can down the stairs to get to the locker room. And now we don't have it anymore, but there used to be this permanent gate that would not swing open. So I had to climb over it in my suit, praying my pants weren't going to rip so that I could get to my team. But when we finally walked onto the court, it felt like a rock concert. And it was an unbelievable atmosphere, and something that, you know, we all just kind of stood back and appreciated what an amazing atmosphere it was. I remember looking up, and I know you probably remember this too, but looking up in the rafters and just seeing people from wall to wall and from the ceiling to the floor and thinking, this is incredible. The electricity that you felt just made you want to run through the wall. And our players played great that day. Nama Shafira had 40 points. You know, she was unbelievable. Probably the worst thing I did was take her out for a little bit in that game. She probably could have had 50, but she was amazing.
I do want to ask you about your staff, though. Kind of when you're going out and hiring a staff, what are you looking for?
What do I look for? As far as my staff is concerned, you know, I'm always looking for people who, you know, number one, are good people, strong character people who work really hard, who know the game, that are going to be there for our players. You know, that, you know, I kind of liken it sometimes to being a doctor on call. You know, you're not just a basketball coach, you're their family away from home. And, you know, we do things that people don't understand that we do. Kid has a flat tire near campus at 10:30 at night. I'm driving back in there to save them. You know, you want to be a big family, and I want people who are going to encourage our kids to give their best, no matter if it's on the court, in the classroom, in the community. People that I enjoy being around every day. That's very, very important, and that our players are going to enjoy being around. We need to continue to develop them, but we also want to inspire them and motivate them and enjoy this experience with them.
Now, how important is your staff right now to you during all of this? You know, not being able to be at practice, but doing Zoom calls like this with your players. How important, you know, is it for them, you know, to be as active, if not more active than you are?
We as a staff, we meet twice a week. We meet on Mondays to get organized for the week for recruiting opportunities, and even to talk about what we need to do with our team. Right now, we are in the process of selecting captains for the next year. Figured we'd go ahead and get that out of the way since we had some time. So we did an exhaustive interview process where the kids on the team had to interview the next captains. And believe it or not, it took about an hour and a half because I made all of them ask questions and made them think on their feet. And so the next call, we're going to announce who won. But our staff is big because we're busy staying in touch with our players, reaching out to recruits, thinking ahead and developing, our game plan for next year. And hopefully it goes off as planned. But I think it's so important to stay in touch with your players right now, because this is such an uncertain time. And we want to make sure that we're also using this time. It's a very unique time to grow as a coach, because there's so many clinics online. It's a great time to catch up on some reading that you didn't have time to do. I took a time to do a 360 evaluation of our program. I called everybody that touches our program and asked them how we could be better. And I'm sharing that information with our staff this week. But, it's given me some new perspective to do some things that I maybe haven't had the time to do in years past.
And how is recruiting going for you right now? Not being able to sit on couches and things like that.
Well, so far we are, we finished up, obviously the 20 class, they're getting ready to come in. And then we've actually finished up the next class, our 21 class. I can't talk to you legally about them yet, but we have 3 kids that are committed to us in the next class. So our staff is actually busy working 2 years out right now. Pretty soon we're going to go to the hospital and look for babies.
I guess you got to start them early, right?
Why not, right?
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do, right?
No, I guess I personally just have one last question. This is something I kind of want to ask everybody we have on the show, just as a part of our Maction segment. What does coaching in the Mid-American Conference mean to you?
I think the first thing that just comes to mind when you asked me that was, you got to bring your best every night. This league in women's basketball has some of the best coaches, has an incredible talent base of players. And it's a really fun league to play in, because there's no gimme games. You really have to bring your best, or you could get beat any night by anybody. And, as a coach, I enjoy it because the competitiveness of it. I've been in some leagues throughout my career where there's certain games you're like, okay, we give our B effort tonight, we're probably going to be okay. I've never felt like that in this league. I felt like every night it's a great match, and it's a well-respected league. And I've really enjoyed the past 12 years, and I'm looking forward to the future of what's about to come as well, because it's been so much fun. If I had to say a final thing, I'd just say thank you to our fans. I'm so grateful that we have such a great fan base at Toledo, and, every day that we come to work, we're just excited to walk in the gym and see them. And I can't wait to see them back in the arena again, even if they're sitting 6 feet apart. I can't wait to see them.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you coming on tonight. This has been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. AJ, did you have anything else you wanted to add, man?
I'm all set.
Coach, and I know personally I'm looking forward to coming back and cheering on the Lady Rockets again. Maybe I'll bring AJ along, convince him to wear some blue and gold.
I'll help you out if you need some gear.
We'll make it a Ball State game.
All right.
Yeah, there we go. Make it a Ball State game. So, thank you so much for joining us, Coach. We really do appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Coach. All right, AJ, I think that's going to do it for us tonight. Guys, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. We definitely appreciate it. If you guys get the chance, please check us out on Twitter at College Sport Pod. We'll be posting our June segment with Coach Cullup here shortly. If you guys do get a chance, follow the Beard Brother Fantasy Football Podcast over on Twitter. They're our Beard cousins, and love to have you guys follow them. And AJ, anything else from you, man?
I'm all set, man. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I learned a lot about Toledo, things I didn't know before. So
Exactly.
cool. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next week.